Casey.
Hello,
Hey, how
how's
are
it
you?
going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Stop second and starting it now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today to help celebrate and commemorate Women's History Month. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Penelope Martin-Knox, the superintendent of the Raytown C2 School District, with us this afternoon. And so, Dr. Martin-Knox, thank you so much for joining today and helping us with the kickoff of and celebrate Women's History Month. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions and have you just, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. So first, let me just start with saying thank you for the opportunity. Being a part of a Women's History Month celebration just brings me so much joy to be able to do so, to recognize and celebrate the hard work and the efforts of individuals such as myself, being women in the work in our nation and in our world. My name is Penelope Martin-Knox, as you've indicated, and I am the proud superintendent here in Raytown Quality Schools in Missouri. This is my second year as superintendent here in Raytown. I come from South Carolina, where I served 3 years as a superintendent. But prior to that, all of my tenure was in Maryland. So I'm a Baltimore, Marylander. I was a teacher, a department chairman, an assistant principal, a supervisor of administrators. And then my final role within Baltimore County Public Schools was that of the chief of school climate and safety. I am married. My husband is a sergeant in Baltimore County Police Department. He still resides in Baltimore. I'm a mother of one son, and I'm just proud of my family and the support that I received from them as I continued this work in education. All of my career has been that of an educator. I don't think there would be anything else that I would want to do because it brings me so much pride and joy in doing this work for children.
Okay. Thank you so much. And to our audience listening, feel free to add any questions you may have in the chat as we go throughout this hour. So thank you so much for telling us about yourself. At what stage in your life did you decide to choose the path of education and why?
So there's a two-part response to that.
Okay.
I believed that my grandmother had instilled in me that at some point I was going to be a pediatrician, was going to be a doctor. I
Mhm.
believed that. But deep down inside, I have always been a teacher. I was the young lady who sat at the end of the school day and I collected all the paperwork and all of the textbooks and the leftover chalk. And so when I went home, we played school on my steps. And so at that point, I didn't realize I was going to be a teacher, but it was truly a part of my DNA. I had a teacher who impacted me in third grade, Miss Eva Wilson. It was probably the first time I ever had a teacher of color in my life, and I wanted to be like her in so many different ways, from the manner in which she presented herself, from the manner in which she spoke. So I want to say around third grade, I began to talk about going into education. When I entered into middle school, I entered into the world of music. I had another teacher who was inspiring, and it is because of him that I decided to go into education because I wanted to provide children the same opportunities that he provided to me. So I was pretty young when I realized that I wanted to do something with children, whether it was pediatrics or whether it was in the field of education. But I thought it was more rewarding when that opportunity presented itself for me to go into the field of education so that I could impart the knowledge that had been given to me and the support that I received from those amazing educators in my life. And I believe that during my journey, I have hopefully imparted some of that same type of support and wisdom in many of the individuals who were in my classroom or past the thresholds of my classrooms over the years.
Okay, thank you. That's awesome. Third grade. Wow. Third grade to be impacted by a teacher at that age, and now you're in the role that you're in, the position that you're in. How did you know though that you wanted to be in administration?
So again, that's a two-pronged response because I didn't. I always just wanted to aspire to be the best teacher that I could possibly be.
Mhm.
It wasn't until one of my principals came into my classroom and she explicitly stated, "You're not going to be here long." So I didn't know if she meant I was going to lose my job, but she said, you're not going to be here long. And later on, I realized what she was referring to. So it was individuals in my life who were my supervisors who then appointed me or encouraged me to take that next step in this journey. Most people aspire to be superintendents. That was not in my journey, nor was being a principal in my journey. I just wanted to be the best teacher I could possibly be for my children. But when the opportunities presented themselves, the challenges came with it. And because I will accept and embrace those challenges, the decision came for me to begin to take the journey into leadership.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us an overview of the district? For example, the number of students, school building, racial demographics, and anything else you'd like to share?
Yes, ma'am. So our district is about 8,000 children. We serve about 8,000 children. The demographics have shifted over the years. Our student population at this particular point in time is about 65% children of color, 50% would be African American, the remaining would be of Hispanic origin. And it's been a demographic shift over the years where the minority has become the majority. Our teaching staff is the reverse of that in terms of the demographic makeup. 70% of our staff are white, while the remaining are Black or other ethnicities. But we continue to do the hard work for our children just to make sure that they have all those opportunities that they deserve to be successful once they graduate. Approximately 50% of our students receive free and reduced lunch, and those are our students who are classified as living in poverty. We've had an increase in the number of students who are classified as homeless. And so we continue to diversify the way in which we deliver instruction to ensure we're meeting the various needs of our students as they cross the thresholds of our schools. So I'm excited to be here in Raytown. It's a smaller district than what I've been accustomed to. As I stated earlier, I come from Baltimore, Maryland, where I was a part of the Baltimore County school staff, where there we had 175 schools and 114,000 children. So being here with 8,000 children, it's a little different. I served in a role of community superintendent where I was responsible for supervising 37 schools. And so being here with the 20 schools, again, no matter where you are in the size, the state of education is very complex. And so we're always looking for creative ways to meet the needs of our children.
Okay, thank you. So having come from a larger school district to Kansas City, what was the deciding factor in choosing the Raytown C2 schools?
Yes, ma'am. So when I left Baltimore County, I'll take that journey backward a little bit. As I stated before, I also served for 3 years as superintendent in South Carolina. I never intended to leave Maryland. It wasn't, again, a part of my journey or my plan. But when the opportunity presented itself for me to serve the community where my grandparents went to school in South Carolina, I seized that moment and that opportunity to go and lead that district. That district was a little larger than this one as well. And so continuing in the pathway of leadership, when the opportunity presented itself for Raytown, it mirrored much of the work that I've already engaged in with Baltimore County or in South Carolina. And I knew that my abilities to continue to transform and leverage the experiences that I had in order to move our students and our school district forward, it was a match. And so anywhere there's a child who's in need, I'm there to support. And so I believe that our children need strong leaders. I believe that our children need strong educators. And I'm here to continue that journey with those who've joined this with me.
Okay, thank you. As you described the makeup and the demographics of the Raytown School District, do you believe there's a need to increase diversity in the teaching staff in the district? And if so, how do you plan to do so?
I do. I believe that all of us need individuals who we can look upon to serve as role models. As I talked about Ms. Eva Wilson, she was that one who inspired me. And I'm not saying that those who don't look like us can inspire us, but I do believe that sometimes our children need to be able to relate a little more. Whether it's our students who are classified as Hispanic, it is most imperative that they have individuals who they believe understand them a little more and are able to speak their language. In most cases. And so I believe that there is a need for us to diversify our staff, and more so in the aspect of being able to deliver quality instruction to our children. I believe that we need teachers who are dedicated and focused on meeting the needs of our children because it is very complex, as I said a few moments ago. So I work very closely with our Department of Human Resources, and what we've done in order to attract and retain a diversified staff, we've been looking at various universities, looking at our HBCU population and expanding our recruitment efforts in those areas so that we are attracting more quality and diversified staff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. What are some of the accomplishments? Share some of the accomplishments in the Raytown C2 School District.
There's so many. As I shared with you a few moments ago, this morning we began with our breakfast, recognizing the work that's happening in our district. And one of the things I can say I'm proud of is I'm proud of the leadership that exists in our schoolhouse. When I talk about making sure all means all, that we're doing what we need to do for children, I believe that the leaders that we have here in Raytown should be celebrated because they are working diligently to ensure that our children have everything that they need. Another success, I can say that we've been shifting the way in which we're delivering instruction. We've leveraged our one-to-one approach to make sure that students have access 24/7 to instruction, and they have all the resources that are necessary for them to be successful, not just while they're in school, but while they're outside of school. We've received multiple grants. We just were awarded a $300,000 grant for safety through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education from the state of Missouri. We also received a $200,000 grant for cybersecurity. And so those types of things need to be recognized and celebrated. I will also take this opportunity to recognize our students. Just this past weekend, we had two groups of individuals from two of our high schools make it to the semifinals, one for dance and the other for basketball. And while they did not come back with first place, the fact that they made it to the semifinals is something that we need to celebrate and recognize. We have students who have participated in adjudications in the arts, and they've all received superior ratings. We have students who have participated in reading and oratorio competitions where they've also received highest ratings. So there's a lot going on here in Raytown that we can celebrate and recognize. And I can go on and on and on and on. But I would encourage individuals to look at our Facebook page, look at our Twitter account or X, and to follow us on Instagram, where we recognize and celebrate all of those accomplishments that are occurring on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, exciting, very exciting. What are some of your biggest challenges in the district?
I think the biggest challenge right now that we are facing is really coming off the heels of the pandemic. Most people say they don't want to hear about the pandemic anymore. The COVID is over. I don't believe it is over. I don't believe that the endemic has approached us yet. I think that we're going to continue to face challenges as it relates to students becoming acclimated to the way in which instruction is delivered. Many of our children were virtual during the time of COVID in the pandemic, and making those adjustments and the return back to the schoolhouse is still an ongoing challenge. We have an increase in the mental support that our students are in need of. So the challenge is really equipping our staff, our leaders and our teachers with the tools necessary to address the mental support that many of our children need. Not only do our children need it, but our community as well. And so that is a shift in the focus, because oftentimes we talk about delivering instruction and making sure academics are at the forefront. But I truly believe that if children are not prepared mentally for learning, they're not going to receive anything that we deliver to them. So really focusing on the emotional well-being of our children is crucial at this particular point in time here in Raytown.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will ask those questions. We do have a couple of questions. What is your most complex struggle as a female superintendent?
So it's really just shining and rising in my own right and continuing the fight for children. I think the complexities come in because it is an anomaly when a woman sits in the seat of superintendent. While education is a female-dominated profession, when we get into the categories of leadership, it's diminished. So many of our teachers, about 80% around the nation, are females. But when we get into leadership, those numbers begin to dwindle, and about 20% of women are in leadership or principalship roles and beyond. But when you get into the work of superintendency around the nation, less than 20% of the seats that are held by women are under the umbrella of superintendent. but even more complex when we get into women of color. It's less than 1% around the nation. So the challenges really come into play because it's a matter of me introducing myself and really getting people to understand what my purpose is. And my purpose is to do what's best for children. And so it does have its challenges because oftentimes, if you look at research and you look at some of the comments that are being made, through research practices or in literature, that if a woman is delivering a message, sometimes she comes off to be emotional as opposed to being passionate. She comes off to be aggressive as opposed to just forward in her thinking. And so those are some of the complexities that come along when decisions are being made. You'll have people who will categorize the decisions that are being made as opposed to really getting underneath it to determine the decisions are really being made for what's best for children. Not about my gender, not about my race, but about doing what's best for a community and for a group of children.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. Here's another question. What suggestions for women who want to assume a leadership position can you share?
Yes, ma'am. Throughout my journey, there's always been a female. I always encourage women to encourage other women. And that's most important, particularly during the month of Women's History Month. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get into our roles and in our space and there's no one else around us. But I strongly encourage everyone to attach yourself to a woman who is in that work. And I call them thought partners, just making sure that you can understand the work and what would be required of you as you're moving through this journey. Now, men can provide you with some ideas as well, but walking in the shoes of a woman is a little different. And so I always have someone that I can depend on and count on to call, but I also bring others along the way. There's a phrase that I use, and I actually did the post not too long ago. And I always believe in you should be able to put a crown on a woman and shift it when it needs to be shifted without letting the world know that it needed to be shifted. And so that's that space that you are in with that individual to make sure those conversations are confidential, that they are supportive, and that you're giving opportunities to those individuals to help them grow. A part of the work is also providing that constructive feedback. And oftentimes we don't want anybody to give us that feedback or anything that seems to be critical. Receive that information, take it and shape it and use it to how you believe it will help you grow and continue to grow and become a partner in groups. There's groups out there for women superintendents that I'm a part of. There's a lot of literature out there about women in leadership, but I would encourage you to find a woman that's near you. And if you need one, I can refer one to you, whether you're here in Missouri or anywhere else, just so you can have that person as a quote unquote thought partner in this work and in your journey.
You reminded me of this past weekend, and I don't know if you attended the Lift Her Up conference.
I did.
And so just what you described reminded me of that, lifting each other up as women, how important it is to do that.
Yes, ma'am. And it gave me great pride to be in the presence of such amazing women. And I shared with someone, I had never been in a room with so many women before, and not just being in the room with women, but professional, beautiful, intelligent, thought-provoking women who are all focused on being successful. And so opportunities like that, we need to seize those moments to celebrate one another and to lift one another up. During the breakfast at some point, we were asked to grab one another's hands and to just unite and unify, and we don't do that enough. One of the things that I will say is that type of activity allowed us to put sister or to keep sister in the term of sisterhood. Yeah. We can't forget one another. And oftentimes there's someone who's traveling on a journey where you've already gone, and you can provide that support to just another woman if you just sit there and listen and provide that space for them to be there and to be present for them. So yes, ma'am, I was a part of it, and it was amazing.
It was so inspiring. It really was.
Well, so is the organizer. LaShawn is an amazing, amazing individual. And so all of that work that she put into ensuring that we could come together to celebrate, and collaborate with one another.
Yes, thank you so much. Couple of other questions. Who were some mentors that you have or had over the years?
So I will begin with my first principal, who told me I wasn't going to be in the classroom very long, Karen Barnes. She's a remarkable individual. She's still focused on education. She coaches, she supports, she mentors. She's been a role model for me, but all of the others have primarily been males. My middle school music teacher, my college band director, Melvin Miles, served as a role model for me as well. When I graduated from college, I was a band director. So this space of being a minor portion, if you will, of the cadre of music educators, I've always been in a space where it's been me and a few others. So as a band director, I was one of few Black female band directors in the state of Maryland. And so my college band director served as a support and serves as a support and mentor. But I'll go ahead and add another person to this mix, my grandmother. 5 years ago, my grandmother departed in this space, but she provided me, she was my first mentor, setting those expectations for me to say you will and you can do. And just making sure she provided those opportunities for me to continue to move forward. So I will say, even though she was my grandmother and she raised me, she was also my mentor. And so I'm grateful for her and grateful for what she did for me during her time here with us on earth.
Okay. Who do you believe is the future? And this is another question from the audience. Who do you believe is what do you believe is the future of education for minority children?
So if we don't continue to fight for children, I'm not sure if our children are going to be able to navigate through adversity. We also have to put people in front of our children to help encourage them through those aspects. And when we look at, I'm going to wrap this into one of the questions you talked about in terms of the recruitment piece. Right now, we as educators are always looking for ways in which we can attract quality educators in the classrooms for our children or in leadership. We're all in this same place with a teacher shortage. So if we're not filling those roles as educators, I don't know what we're going to be able to do for our children, because they do need quality individuals to stand in front of them on a daily basis, to deliver instruction, but to formulate relationships with them as well. I do believe that the future will be bright for all children, because you have individuals such as myself and others who are going to continue to fight and keep this journey moving forward so that we can provide for our children so that they have those opportunities that they so deserve.
Okay, thank you. Another question, how much support does Raytown and other suburban school districts get from the state of Missouri in terms of education?
Sure. So all those school districts receive funding based on the student enrollment, the per pupil allocation. Not only is it based on this per pupil allocation, but it is also based on the daily attendance. So it's most important that we continue to push our children to come to school, because if students are absent about 17 days or more, then the funding is reduced. So when we look at our student allocation, it's in the middle of the road, if you will, and we continue to move forward because you get funding from multiple sources. You get federal funding, you get state funding, and you get local funding to support our children. I believe that, again, we are continuing to move forward. I know that there's laws and legislation out there to ensure that we are increasing the salaries of our teachers. And when we increase the salaries of our teachers, we'll be able to do more for our children, because, again, we'll be able to attract and retain quality individuals. But in terms of moving forward for our children here in Raytown, the supports actually come from the district office, which is my office. Regardless as to what those supports look like outside of, when the expectation is to make sure that we have a can-do attitude, a can-do and will-do attitude, I think that we continue to support our children in moving forward, regardless of any obstacles that may be in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Another question from the listeners. Dr. Martin-Knox mentioned that she has a music background. Do you play an instrument, or is it vocals?
I play an instrument. And so, again, very rare that you see someone who looks like me who's a band director. My main instrument is clarinet, a classical clarinetist, but I also played saxophone in jazz band as a music major. We had to perform in all of the ensembles and performing groups. And so, yes, I still practice. I still pull my clarinet out of its case. Especially when I'm at that space where I need to decompress sometimes, it is still my go-to for that mental clearness, if you will, or clarity. So clarinet is my primary instrument, and I still have my baton. So if anybody needs a guest conductress, you can connect with my agent.
You'll have to give me the name. Another question, and thank you for the questions, listeners. How do you engage parents in the district and ensure they are involved in the education of their children?
Absolutely. And so one thing I can say about parents, our parents send us the very best they have. Right? All of our children are prized possessions. And I believe that when we're making decisions, it's most important that we have the voice of our parents at the table. Mm-hmm. Just last evening, we had a safety task force meeting where we invited our parents to come in and be a part of a dialogue. We do that same process with anything else that we are implementing here as a district, because again, the parents are shared partners in this work. So I do believe that our parents' voices need to be at the table when we're having conversations, meeting with our PTA presidents, being a part of PTA events. I think it is, again, crucial for the success of children to ensure that the parents are a part of this journey, but that we're using their voices at the table to collaborate and to continue to move the work forward. When we're talking about school progress planning, it is encouraged for all of our schools to make sure that there are parents at the table to have those conversations, because again, they're oftentimes on the outside looking in, but again, we are investing in the same thing, and that's the success of their children. And so I do believe there's an importance in the voice of a parent. We send out surveys where we can get the feedback from our parents as well. But just including them every step of the way is very, very, very important. I actually received an email this morning from a parent just saying, thank you for being a listener. And sometimes it's just listening. When that phone call comes through, either I or my staff will make sure that we return that phone call. And it is not a generic email that says, I've received your message, but truly being on the other end and providing support. And when we have students who are ill or the unfortunate passing in some of our youngsters, I personally make the phone calls to our parents just to offer my support for them during this particular point in time in need. And so, yes, I do believe that parent voice is important in all the conversations we engage in, particularly as we move our district forward.
Okay. Thank you. Another question from the listeners: what are the steps and or protocol for the students and staff when they believe they are not being heard and or assistance with ongoing issues within the district? If they have, if they have to follow the chain of command, but have not heard a response or given us a response.
So the expectation that I have in place is that at a schoolhouse that parents should receive a return call or response to any inquiry within 48 hours. When it's district level, it's 24 hours. So I would say to you that if you have followed the chain of command, if you will, and I don't like calling it a chain of command because it seems like, you know, the chain can't be broken, but depending on the urgency of the matter, there's additional staff that's available. And so what I would ask you to do is to reach out to your superintendent's office. If it is a matter in Raytown, reach out to my office and I will make sure that the individual or individuals that will help you to resolve those matters are available to you. And I may also be able to resolve that matter as well. But at any time, you should have a response from someone to help resolve any issues that you may have. When we're talking about the resolution of matters, have a conversation with the teacher. If you're not getting that point of satisfaction or what you think is resolving that matter, there's the assistant principal and then the principal. And then after that has occurred, and since we're again talking about the protocol, then each of our principals has an assistant superintendent. So if it's elementary, there's an assistant superintendent for elementary schools, and then there's an assistant superintendent for secondary schools. And those individuals also have a supervisor, and that's the chief academic officer, Dr. Chris Greiner. But again, instead of having you go back and backtrack whomever it is that you've already made contact with, I would encourage you to go ahead and call one of the assistant superintendents or send an email or email me. And I will assure you that we will get resolution to the problem.
Okay, thank you. I have a question that I've written down, and you've answered it throughout this conversation, but if you'll allow me, I'll ask it again.
Yes, ma'am.
So according to your bio, I looked at your bio and you've served in several roles in education, and I'll repeat what you said because it's very impressive. Middle school music teacher, department chair, principal, assistant superintendent, community superintendent, chief of school climate and safety, and superintendent again. Was this, and I think you've answered this, but my question and my thought was when I read this was, and it may help the audience, was this a planned career path, or did it occur organically? Because sometimes people in companies, they follow a career path, and some are afraid to get off of that path and go a different direction. So can you speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. So I touched on it as you stated earlier. It was not my career path. I just knew I was going to be the world's greatest teacher ever in a day. I never thought of leadership. My joy and my passion was in the classroom. And so it took a little convincing for me to step out in the world of leadership. Again, I served as a department chairman, but what I realized in going into leadership, all of my districts are my classroom. So continuing to serve as an educator, I'm a teacher by heart and will always be a teacher. And that's how I lead. I lead as an educator because I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And so each step that I have taken was encouraged by a leader or a supervisor who was in my immediate area or space. It goes back also to one of the questions that was posed in terms of what's the pathway or what is the recommendation for someone who wants leadership. While I did not aspire initially for leadership, I was tapped into. So that goes to another piece that we talked about with the lift her up. I believe that during my journey, I have been lifted. The journey that I have traveled was set for me, not by me. And so each time I accepted the challenge and I stepped into the role. I'll go back to something else that you said in terms of my bio. My last role in Baltimore County was the Chief of School Climate and Safety. And I'll just tell you how that came about. My superintendent called me in her office one day and she said, you know, we need to do something different. We need to do something about the social emotional well-being of our children. I was like, yeah, we really do. And she said, I need to create a division. Yeah, maybe that would be great. And I said, oh, that's nice. When are you going to do it? She was like, next year. I said, I think that's great. She looked at me, she said, but you're going to do it. Me? Like that. I didn't expect that when you called me. And I said, so what's my objective? She said, that's for you to figure it out. You're smart enough. You take it. So from there, I built a division that never existed to provide support to children, not just the emotional safety, but the physical safety. Again, it was not something that I had planned, but it was as a result of the creativity of the superintendent at that particular point in time, examining and evaluating the needs of our children and knowing what needed to go into place, but then tapping into those talents that exist around you. And so that's what I will say to any leader who is on this call. You don't wait for anyone to come to you. You don't wait for someone to come to you to say, I'm able to do. Sometimes you have to tap into the talent that exists around you. And for those of you who aspire, you don't wait for someone to come get you. I will ask the question when you sit at the table to do an interview, what is your legacy? And so I want to hear, what is it that you have done that has impacted the lives of children in a positive way? So in either end, whether you're a leader or whether you're aspiring, you don't wait for anyone to come to you for you. You show them who you are. And so during my time, as you indicated, it wasn't my plan, but it actually became my destiny. And so I am going to truly be in this work for children as long as I possibly can. And I'm always a teacher first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. My final question for you, and if again, if the listeners have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And so this kind of rolls into what you just described, I believe, but what professional advice would you give to young African-American women, either starting out in their careers or to those who already are in their careers and want to make a change?
Yes, ma'am.
In their careers, period.
Yes, ma'am. I believe most importantly, it has to be something that you want. It has to be organic. It has to be a drive, because one of the things that we need in terms of leadership and moving forward is something called resiliency. We have to be able to navigate through conflict regularly, right? Like this is a daily occurrence when you're navigating through conflict, and you always have to be forward thinking in your work. I would encourage you to read literature, find yourself professional organizations to become a part of. I would also do research and find someone who's near you who can serve, as I indicated earlier, as a thought partner in this work. take a moment to go out and observe and to shadow individuals just to make sure that's something that you desire and that you aspire to do, and to go for it. Don't let anything or anyone get in your way of something that you so passionately want. If there are some stumbling blocks, understand they're going to be there, and they're just that, they're blocks. They can be moved, they can be stepped over, but there's nothing that should be able to stop you. So I would encourage you to continue to, as I indicated, wrapping it together, continue to do your research, find literature, join professional organizations, find someone who's near you who is in the position or aspires to do the same thing that you have a goal to do and to accomplish and to go for. Nothing should stop you. It is frightening. It can be frightening. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the work is easy, because then I wouldn't be honest with you. The work is very challenging and complex, but it can be done. Keep your head up and continue to move forward. And there are individuals always around to help you to continue to meet your goals. And as women, we have to continue to stand together. And as we talked about earlier, to continue to lift one another up.
Thank you. Here's another question from the listeners. What are your thoughts on this? Do you feel that it will be beneficial and more effective for a great leader to operate first in the trenches, or to just go straight to the leadership position if they have the skill set?
I'm going to tell you the authentic answer. I don't consider it the trenches, but I consider it an experience that gives you an understanding of the work. I have a philosophy and belief that you can't lead a school if you don't know how a school operates. You cannot serve in the capacity of giving support to principals, to assistant principals, and to teachers if you've not understood the work. I don't believe that there is a time frame for it, but I do believe that that experience allows you to think a little more analytical and in more complex situations to be able to make decisions in the end that are beneficial to children. That's just a philosophical belief. There are some others out there who believe that if you have the skill set and the talent, to go for it. I just believe that understanding the intricacies and the dynamics that exists within an organization, you should have some sort of experience and understanding of how to navigate through those before you begin to lead others in that work.
And I actually agree with that. I've had that experience. So I started my career in the trenches. And so I tell people that sometimes because I knew what was going on, it only helped me further my career to understand that, to your point. So I agree with that.
Yes, ma'am. And we had a conversation last evening where someone had asked, how do we navigate through situations when they occur in a schoolhouse? And I had to point out that all of my leaders, with the exception of maybe 2, have all been school assistant principals or principals, because I believe you understand the nuances of what happens in a schoolhouse. Before we can begin to build programs, before we can begin to build processes, before we can set expectations, you need to know what it looks like on the inside to be able to unwrap it and to wrap it back up again. And the only way you can get that is through experience. That's just a personal philosophical belief. And there's some individuals that says, well, if I can do it, then let me just go ahead and do it. I don't want to discourage anyone, but just think intently about being in that space to be able to help someone else.
Yeah, thank you. So as we wrap up, what would you like to add? What would you like to share with the listeners?
So again, I preface with this, thank you for the opportunity to be on here. I hope that I've been able to inspire individuals and not dissuade anyone, but to truly allow everyone to understand that the world of education is a powerful space and place to be in. If you are seeking opportunities, I want to use this as a plug, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but if you know anyone who's looking for a job, we're looking for teachers. And I'm always looking for someone who is going to be dedicated and focused on doing what's best for our students, and not just teachers, but support staff as well. This journey is not something that you can take in isolation and by yourself, but you always need someone with you. And I don't mean to be cliche-ish to bring it back up, but it's always about an opportunity to empower one another. And so I encourage you to continue to do the work that's best for our children, because those factors impact our community and how great we can be as a nation. So thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of the conversation, and happy Women's History Month.
The same to you, and thank you for joining us and helping us to celebrate the Raytown C2 district is fortunate to have you. I will say that just
you.
from this interaction. And you've also been inspiring, I'm sure, to me, and I'm sure to other listeners, women who are listening. So thank you again for your time, and best of luck to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much. And thank you all for tuning in. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Bye-bye.